Do you struggle to get your mixed media projects just right? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing a foolproof step-by-step method that guarantees stunning results every single time. No more guesswork. So let's get into it. So before we get into these steps, I really wanted to stress how important paper is because I have seen it time and time again where people are frustrated and I'm like, well, what paper are you using? Well, a cheap cardstock from the dollar store or whatever the case may be. And that's not going to work. All right, so I'm going to talk briefly about what to look for when you're trying to find the right paper for distress sprays. On the left here, I have some paper that does not work properly with distress sprays. And on the right here, this happens to be some distress watercolor paper, but you can also use Strathmore mixed media paper. Scrapbook.com mixed media paper is a hit or miss, so I would probably use one of those two. If you're going to use the distress watercolor paper, I do suggest doing your sprays on the back side, the smooth side. All right, so I'm going to show you first what to look for and what you don't want to happen with your sprays. So I'm going to spray just a little bit here and you'll see right away that that seeps right in. Okay, I'm going to add quite a bit and it just soaks right in. Right, that's not what we want when looking for a paper for distress sprays. What we want is to have the spray sit on top. Okay, some of it's going to soak in, but you'll see most of it's going to sit right on top. But also you're going to want to look for like when you spray it, does it move? So this one does not. It just, the water soaks right in. This one, I can get all of that to move, even the parts that soaked right in, because it's watercolor paper, right? So I'm going to take a little bit more of this and show you. You can add all the spray you want, even a little bit of water. I could try to get that moving, but you are going to be very frustrated if you're trying to get a background that you like using a paper that this happens to. So hopefully this helps guide you in the right direction. I have a few of my favorites. But other people have favorites as well, like Bristol Smooth cardstock is a really great one as well. So yeah, just kind of try out papers you have. You can even splatter on some of the spray if you don't want to waste a full piece of paper. And you'll be able to see right away if it's going to soak right in or if it will sit right on top. All right, I hope that was helpful. And if you have a favorite paper that I did not mention, be sure to leave it down in the comments so that everybody can see all of the other suggestions and maybe they have some in their stash. All right, so I'm actually going to be using a piece of Strathmore mixed media paper today, and this measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to put it on this really small cooling rack. I absolutely love these for using sprays, and I'm not going to be going crazy with my color combinations or all of the layers I'm going to be doing because I really want this to be simple. I don't want anybody looking at this background and immediately thinking it's overwhelming. I'm not going to be able to do this. I want everybody to walk away from watching this video to not only be inspired, but to feel confident enough to actually want to sit down and create with your sprays. So I'm only going to be using 2 colors today, but I do start by spritzing my paper with just a little bit of water. And I'm going to be using Evergreen Bough and Rusty Hinge. Then I'm going to be adding a little bit of water to get that color moving around and kind of blend together. And then I'm going to start drying my background. And because we're only going to be using 2 colors, I really want to add a lot of depth and interest on my background with very minimal effort. So I do this by adding spritzes of water while I'm drying, and then I'll go in if needed, adding a little bit more color as well. It's really important to remember if you're doing a mixed media background with distress sprays and you really want all of that depth and texture and interest on your background, you're going to need to add quite a few different layers. Now we started off with our initial color, then we added a little bit of water to get it moving and mixing together, and then you can add even more color by either spraying on more or you can use the nozzle to kind of splatter on color. I do both ways. They're really isn't a right or wrong way. And you're also going to need to add water splotches or splatters. You can spray it on. I like to do it two different ways. I like to put it in my hand and kind of let it drip off of my hand. And then I'll take the distress sprayer and just kind of spritz it out just a little bit. Each layer you add to your background is going to bring so much interest and depth to it. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually adding spritzes of water and then picking it up from my background. This is going to pick up some of that color and add even more depth to it. And once you like your background at least 80% of the way, you're going to dry it completely. When your distress sprays are dry, or your watercolors or whatever you're using is completely dry, then you're going to move on to the next step. So the first step was adding color, and then the next step is going to be adding some stenciling with some archival ink. And for this color combination, I'm going to be using ground espresso. So this is not necessary, but I'm gonna bring in my grip mat because I absolutely love this thing. And I'm going to add my paper down and then my stencil right on top. This just helps everything kind of just stick together. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the beauty of mixed media, is nothing has to be perfect. And you're going to want to use some archival ink or a permanent ink when you're doing your ink blending or stamping, because if you add more splatters or more spray or water splotches or anything like that, you want to make sure that it doesn't bleed and get everywhere and just become a muddy mess. So this is going to be permanent on top of the spray. All right, so I'm gonna just kind of ink off. I don't know if I should have done that on there. This is kind of hard to clean, to be honest, but I love it either way. So I'm gonna just kind of go in around the corners, and I'm not pressing really hard. I don't want a very dark impression of this stencil. I just want a very light, kind of almost like a halo, I guess, of the, yes, perfect. I don't know if you could see that. That's perfect, okay? So we're creating layers, right? Then I'm gonna go in on this side now. So I'm picking up some ink, kind of dabbing some of it off on the side here. And I'm gonna move this up a little bit, just like that. Because I want that 13, or that 3 at least. And then, perfect. And then I wanna kind of go in here, get that number, get those numbers in the center, and then down here. All right, that is perfect. So again, we're just creating layers. So that's, the next step. So again, we had the first step was to add color to our paper. Then we added a little bit of stenciling. Next, we're gonna add even more texture or interest to our background. And I'm going to use the same ground espresso. And what I like to do is I like to kind of curve my stamp, so the script stamp. And then what I'm going to do is take it and then kind of, I don't know what that would be called, but that motion. And then I'm going to stamp it off again down here a couple times, and then kind of go here. And I'm not pressing down 100% because I don't want it to be completely perfect, right? So you want it to kind of be imperfect. And then I'm going to go on this side. I'm actually going to take this. Okay, and then we're going to go like that down there. And I am stamping over some of that stenciling. This is where the layers come in, right? And I think I want just a little more stamping down at the bottom there. And then, the more you do this, the more you're going to be able to kind of, eyeball it to where you want it, and then it'll just come natural to you where you're like, yep, it's done. All right, this is looking perfect. So again, the first layer was the color, and we did actually add some more depth and implied texture with water splatters, but that's kind of the same layer as the color. So then we added a little bit more interest with some stenciling, some light stenciling, and then we went in with some stamping on top of that. okay? I'm going to take this and I'm going to, well, I think I might actually go like this. And I'm just gonna get that lucky right there. A little darker than all the rest, okay? And this is just gonna add another layer of goodness to your background here. And then I'm gonna go up here, add these numbers up here a little bit darker. And I am going over that stamping and other stenciling. It's totally fine. And I like these little numbers down here. So I'm gonna add those down in this corner here. A little bit off of the page. And I am pressing a little harder down here because I want it a little bit darker, right? So we have layers of goodness there, okay? All right, to keep it simple, I'm just gonna add this butterfly I've had in my drawer right here. Oh, let's see. I've got several of them actually. I kind of like this one too. I'm gonna ink up the edge a little bit. And adding a focal point does not have to be hard. Now I think I am actually going to add a little bit of paste in the center. Okay, and I'm using this Distress Opaque texture paste. And I'm just gonna use this stencil right here. This is the Deco Arch stencil, I believe is what it's called. Another one of my favorites. And I don't want too much, right? But I want enough to where it kind of peeks out from behind that butterfly. And I don't want it to be perfect either. And what I did is I did not add any sealant. So I'm hoping that some of the spray is going to soak into that paste. A lot of times I don't want that, but for this one I do because I don't want it to be so white. So hopefully that will happen. If not, no worries. Yes, that's a little bit better. That kind of grounds the butterfly there. All right, this dries fairly fast, but I did use my heat tool, but you could see that's exactly what I wanted. So some of that color is soaking into that paste, which is perfect. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some Distress Micro Glaze. And this is going to seal the Distress spray and everything. The stamping doesn't really need to be sealed, but it's just gonna help everything just stay where it needs to be. That way when I add my white splatters, the white splatters stay pretty white. All right, so this isn't like artist grade sealant or anything, but for card making, it works perfectly fine. And it also brightens everything up, and it just adds like this, I don't know how to explain it. It just adds a lot of depth, or it helps bring out the depth of all of that spray on that background. I'm going to cut this down a little bit because I do like a border around my card panels, and then I will rough up the edges a little bit. All right, and I have this really old distresser tool. You can use scissors as well, but this is just what I'm gonna use. It just goes a little bit quicker. And then of course, I always like to add my white splatters. I'm using Dina Wakley Gloss Spray for the splatters. I take the nozzle out and I use whatever's in the pipe to splatter on my background. I'm not gonna add too many this time. I am gonna add a couple to my butterfly here, just because I wanna make sure everything kind of flows together. All right, and because I love texture, I'm gonna add some of this upholstery thread. A lot of people use like sewing thread, but upholstery thread is a lot thicker and it will stay kind of a little bit better how you want it to. So what I do is I just take maybe like 12 inches or so, depending on what I'm using it for. And then I'll just wrap it around my fingers and then I will kind of smush it out. That's the best way I can describe how I do it. So I'm just gonna add some of this tacky glue. I don't know if this is gonna work on top of the paste, but we'll see. So I'm gonna add quite a bit there. Okay, I'm just laying that there, and then I'm just gonna put that butterfly right on top of that, just like that, okay? And to adhere this down, I'm just gonna use a tape runner. I don't really see many people using these. I actually really like them. They're not, you know, 100% the best thing to use, but oh wow. Got a lot of smudges on there. But it will work. So I'm going to adhere this to my card base. Just like that. Perfect. All right, so for an easy sentiment, I always like to use these stickers. And this is the occasions pack. I get asked all the time. I don't know where you can find this other than Hobby Lobby. I've scoured the internet. I can't find it online. So I found this at Hobby Lobby. So just so you know, that's where I get this one in particular. I really love this one because it has literally everything from 4th of July to Halloween, wedding, everything, Christmas, holiday. It has a lot of things. So it's just a good overall great sentiment pack to have. Use this one, become your best you. All right, I'm going to add some ink to the edge here. And I think I'm gonna pop that up in the center of my butterfly. And it just so happens that these little strips from scrapbook.com, these double-sided adhesive foam strips, work perfectly for these sentiments. So that's what I like to use, right in the center of the butterfly. All right, there you have it. There is your mixed media card. I think it's a foolproof method to get a really great grungy mixed media card if that's what you're looking for. So we did, the first step was color, and then within that step, or the next step maybe I should say, is to add water to add more depth and implied texture to that background. And then when that was dry, we added some stenciling so for some more interest, and then we did some stamping. So we're now at 4 steps, and then the 5th step is the paste. So this is a 5-step mixed media process, but I feel it's super simple, super easy, and I think that you can do it. You just have to take it one step at a time. I am breaking down the process into easy, manageable steps so that you can do this for yourself. And if you do, I would love to see it, so be sure to tag me on social media. Now this was simple, but I have an even simpler technique linked right here in this Mixed Media Monday video for you. I use some watercolors with a brayer, so be sure to check that one out. And as always, don't forget to stay creative.